7% of a number. All right, so everybody, are you open? Natalie, you need to be on page 318. All right, let's read beside the guy with the fish in his clothing. Interesting, does everybody see that? The human body is made up mostly of water. In fact, about 67% of a person's total body weight is water. Okay, now that's 67%. That means 67 out of how much? Good, Sarah, good. If Cameron weighs 90 pounds, about how much of his body weight is water? Recall that a percent is part of 100. Since you want to know the part of Cameron's body part that is water, you can set up and solve a proportion to find the answer. All right, let's talk about ratios and proportions. Remember, a ratio is a relationship between two numbers, a top number and a bottom number, and we write it as a fraction. A proportion is two ratios that are equal to each other, a top and a bottom, and I need to make sure this is in the camera. So what did I just say? A proportion is two ratios that are equal. So let's talk about Cameron's body weight. Well, actually, let's talk about the ratio of water that makes up the human body. What is that percentage? What percent of our body is water? 67. So, Ronan, that means 67 out of how much? This is our ratio. What's the whole?
Oh, 100.
Good, 67 out of 100. That's the ratio that represents the percentage of water that makes up the human body. All right, so Cameron weighs 90 pounds. We need to figure out where 90 pounds goes in here and where our unknown goes in here. What I want you to notice is that in our ratio, we did part to whole. Now, would it have made our ratio wrong if we had done whole to part? No, we can write a ratio upside down as long as the other ratio in the proportion is written in the same apples to apples comparison. That means if part is on top over here, part has to be on top over here, right, Natalie? If whole is on the bottom over here, whole has to be on the bottom over here. So it says if Cameron weighs 90 pounds, how much of his weight is water? Is 90 pounds part of him or all of him? It's all. So it's going to go on the bottom. It's his whole weight. And if we want to find out how many pounds of him is water, here's our question mark or our X. So that's what we're going to be doing today. There are actually a couple of different ways to do it, and we're going to be learning about those. All right, so notice we're doing part to whole, part to whole. All right, everybody look at example 1. Using proportions to find percents of a number. Find the percent of each number. We want to find 67% of 90. Now remember, this is the same example we were just doing. That was the introduction to it. 67% was the percent of water that makes up the human body. Now we need to find 67% of this whole over here. How do we find 67% of 90? Well, we have this proportion. And Ronan, how do we solve a proportion? What's that called?
Cross multiply.
Yes, we cross multiply. Does anybody have a calculator? Don't use yours so we don't risk messing up the timer. Is that okay? Does anybody have a calculator you can use? And I'll get a sip of coffee while y'all grab this. Rare treat to pull out phones in class, but turn on the calculators really quickly. It's fine, Natalie, you don't need it. It's just if you have it. Okay, ready? So let's cross multiply. 67 times 90, what is that? Lily, you want to be our calculator today?
Yeah, just
Brennan can't stand not using his calculator. Oh, okay. Here, I can tell you what this one is. It's this one. It's this number right here. Now, what do we multiply? Let's, instead of a question mark, let's call this X. What's going to be on this side when we cross multiply? 100x. Now, Sarah, how do we solve for X in this problem? These are multiplied together. We need to divide both sides by 100. Very good. And that x alone, and the math on that is going to be 60.3. Now, how did I know that without using a calculator? Do you remember we talked about when we divide by a 10, we move the decimal place once. When we divide by 100, we move the decimal place twice. When we multiply by a 10, we go in the opposite direction. Our number gets bigger, and we move the decimal place once. And when we multiply by 100, we move the decimal place twice. So for every 0 in tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, for every 0, we move the decimal place one time. So I didn't have to do that on a calculator. I didn't have to do it on paper. I just knew to move the decimal. So what, or how many pounds of his body weight is 67% of 90? How many pounds? 60.3. Isn't that cool? That's pretty easy. Proportions are easy as long as you understand about keeping apples to apples. If we do part to whole over here, then part to whole over here. Oh, just one second, let me come back to that. Do y'all know what the saying apples to apples means? It means we compare things that are alike. In other words, we're not going to talk about the taste of apples and eat an apple and a lemon. We're not going to talk about the taste of oranges and eat a lemon and a grapefruit. We're going to eat two types of oranges and compare them. Or to compare the taste of apples, we're going to eat two kinds of apples. That's why we say, that's why the saying says compare apples to apples. It means you're comparing things that are alike. Good, Sarah. Okay. Natalie, question?
So if you weighed exactly 100 pounds, 67% of your body weight would be water?
67 pounds of your body weight would be water, and 67% of your body weight would be water. Yeah. Okay, let's look at example 2. Let's find 145% of 210. I'm going to keep moving down so that this stays in the camera. 145% of 210. All right, how are we going to do this? We're going to do part to whole equals what, Ronan? Part to whole. We're going to keep it the same. So let's do part to whole equals part to whole. Okay, 145% means 145 over what? 100. That might be a little confusing because the 145 is bigger, and we're going to study that in just a few minutes. Now, 145 100ths means 145%, and 210 is our whole. We want to find out what this much of it is. So where's the 210 going to go? On the bottom. The bottom, actually. Okay, so the reason we know that that goes on the bottom, Natalie, is because remember we're doing part to whole. And we're finding 145% of this big number. We know it's our whole. It's the part that we want to find, okay? So let's do x there. And Sarah, how are we going to solve for x to find out what that percentage is? Or what that part is? What kind of multiplication? What do we call that? We're going to go, good. Cross multiplication. So on this side, what's this going to be, Sarah? What is it? Yes, 100x. And then this is going to be 145 times 210. Anybody want to do that for me? Natalie, can you do that? I'm sorry, not Natalie. Lily, can you do that?
30,450.
That's right, 30,450. Now let's use my trick. How do we get x alone here, Ronan? Divide both sides by 100. Let me see if this is still catching in the video. Yes. Now, remember, you can do this on paper, or you can remember that dividing means the number's going to get smaller. If you divide a number into parts, of course, the number has to get smaller. If we divide by 100, it's going to get smaller by how many decimal places? 2. Good job, y'all. So that's going to be 304.5 because I went whoop whoop 2 decimal places, okay? Let's make sure that's the right answer. Yes. Okay, now I want to show you what I consider to be a slightly easier way to do this. Can you tell us how we're doing on time, Ronan, for our video?
4 minutes.
Okay.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. up to a percentage that's bigger than 100? We'll look at that in just a few minutes, but everybody look at number 2 for the moment. So we're going to do the same problems, but actually we're not. We're doing new problems, but we're going to do them with a simpler, what I think is a simpler type of math. Find the percent of each number, just like we did before. Okay, so we want to find 8% of 50. So let's look right here. 8% of 50. I've told you this before. What does the word of mean in a math problem? It means to multiply. 8% of 50. Every math problem, when you have word problems, Natalie, cheer, hun. When you have word problems, all of those words, not all, most of those words, maybe some of those words, I went from all to most to some of those words have very specific math meanings. Of means what? Everybody say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3.
Of means multiply.
Of means what?
Multiply.
Of means what?
Multiply.
What does equals, no, let's see. I didn't ask that right. Is means equals, of means. Okay, so all we're going to do is multiply. Girls, I need you to be careful to pay attention. So we're going to say 8%, what's that math? Times 50. What is an 8%? We need to change that to a decimal number. Sarah, where is the decimal in the number 8? Before you change anything. It's at the end. There's a decimal after the 8 because it's the whole number 8, okay? But now to get rid of the percent and change it to a decimal, how many places are we going to move it away from the percent sign? Anybody? Not 1. How many dots are right here? 2. We got to move it 2. So we're going to go whoop, whoop, and it's going to be what, Raymond?
0.08.
Very good. 0.08. What does this word mean?
Multiply.
Times 50. Lily, run our math for us. I hope that this is able to be seen in the video. Woo, I hope so. Equals the number 4. Okay.
Move your phone a little.
I can if I need to. So we said we needed to find the percent of 50. So 8% of 50 is how much? Is 4. Do you see how we did that? We didn't have to set up a proportion. We just did some multiplication.
Can you use a calculator?
I'd rather y'all do it on paper. Trying to avoid calculators as much as possible this year. Okay, the next one is 0.5% of 36. What does the word of mean? Multiply. We need to change this percent to a decimal. We got to move it how many times?
Twice.
Oh, not just once. How many?
Twice. I said twice.
Oh, good. Good, Natalie. Okay, we've got to move it away from the percent sign because we're getting rid of the percent sign. So we're going to go 1, 2. So now we're going to have point. We got to fill in those spots. Point what? 0. Good. 0.005. What does this word mean?
Multiply by 30.
What is that, Lily?
It equals 0.18.
0.18. So 0.5% of 36 is 0.18, which is a really tiny number. Running, how are we on time? We're out of time. Okay, we have one more problem and 1 more minute. So let me see what I can make happen here. Earth's total land area is about 57,308,738 miles square. The land area of Asia is about 30% of this total. What is the approximate land area of Asia to the nearest square mile? Looking at the time. Okay, so here we want to find the 30% of that land area. 30%, let's see, we can see that. 30% of this big number that I'm not going to take time to write. It's 57 dot. What does of mean?
Multiply.
What is 30% as a decimal number?
0.30.
We're right here, Renan, so we only have to go 1, 2. So what is it? 0.30 times that big number, and that would be your answer. Okay? Let me stop this.